This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome back to Death by Southwest, the podcast where each week I share a different grisly murder story unique to the American Southwest while my sister and co-host tries to piece together the clues and unravel the mystery behind each of these heinous crimes. I'm your host, Margot.
And I'm Jenna.
And this is episode 49. For anybody who's just tuning in and didn't listen to the bonus episode yesterday, we are trying a new format where on Mondays for the bonus episode, we are releasing our intro and sense of place. And then on Tuesdays, we are going to just get right into the murder story. So if you are dying to know more about Mansfield, Texas, or hear some military trivia, you can go back to yesterday's episode and listen to that. And otherwise, we will jump into this murder story. So we are going to focus on 3 high school students today. And the first one is Adrianne Jones, who was at the time of our story that takes place in 1995. She was age 16. She was a sophomore in high school. She attended Mansfield High School in Texas. Her dad, Bill, and his wife, Linda, her mom, had moved them from Dallas to Mansfield about 11 years earlier, so 1984. Adrianne has 2 younger brothers. Her dad, Bill, worked repairing heavy construction equipment, and he was known as a kind of no-nonsense, kind of gruff and tough man. And a little anecdote that I read about him is that he would keep his heavy brown work boots on when he arrived home at the end of the day, wearing them even after he relaxed and got into his recliner with a drink. He kept them on.
In case any action needed to happen.
I truly believe that's exactly why. He was pretty strict with Adrianne. She was not allowed to stay out past 9 p.m. even on the weekends until she turned 16, and they started loosening up a little bit on the weekends. But whenever she would mention plans that she was going to a movie or I'm going to Six Flags or anything like that, he would ask her for proof when she'd get home. He wanted to see her movie ticket. He wanted to see her amusement park ticket. And to keep her from sneaking out at night, he actually went as far as to nail her bedroom windows shut.
Ooh.
Yeah, he was quite...
Not a bad idea. I mean, okay.
It feels extreme, doesn't it?
Well, it feels more extreme. It would be to lock a person in.
Yes, absolutely.
She can still come out.
Sure.
Go outside the front door.
She just can't climb out her windows, which, I guess you're right. That's true.
I don't know. I'm not a parent, so I'm not saying it's good parenting. It's just, it's interesting.
Yeah. Linda was her mom, Linda, was less strict, but Bill was kind of the man of the house and made the rules. Linda worked as a massage therapist at a Mansfield hair salon. And Adrianne was the kind of girl that one of her fellow classmates described as not just good looking, but good looking. She was just, people found her very beautiful. I have seen a picture. I will post a picture. And she cared about her appearance. She would put on makeup. She would always care about what she was wearing, how she looked when she left the house. Her mom had said to her once, "Why do you go to such trouble to put on makeup before you leave the house if you're just going for a walk or to the grocery store?" And Adrianne said, "Mom, you never know who you might meet." There was something weird that, and I read this several times, that her mom had said about her. Her mom always told her she had a bubble butt. And she liked to joke about her bubble butt because it moved in these, this was what her mom said, sexy little circles when she walked.
I don't really know how to respond to that.
I know, nothing wrong with it. It just seems like an odd thing for a mom to point out constantly, more than once.
Okay, yeah, I don't know because I didn't read, obviously, any of what you're saying. But
right.
I don't know, maybe it was just it became a pet,
an ongoing
pet
joke,
name, but a silly thing, which I'm not saying is right, and obviously doesn't translate in today's
In
day
today's
and age,
world, yeah,
where
yeah.
we can't comment on people's body shape or size unless
Right.
we're assholes, which I agree with. And also,
It's a little extreme, but I mean, it's a little extreme the amount of that we have to
this
censor
day and age.
ourselves in this day and age. Yes. However, I do agree. Yes, you shouldn't necessarily comment on somebody's body, but it's her mom, so fine.
And you might know, or you would know, of the things you know, did it?
It didn't seem to
Bother her?
bother her.
Okay.
No, it didn't seem to. She was not only very, very attractive and very popular and very friendly, she was also incredibly studious and smart. She was taking multiple honors classes that required her to study for several hours a night. She also had previously played soccer, but she hurt her knee and then joined cross country, which seems odd to me because like soccer, you're running, you're not jumping, you're running, and cross country, you're running. So how is one better than the other? I guess
The
maybe
impact of hitting the ball.
and the impact of other players running into you in
Yeah.
soccer.
Yeah.
Like you could
the
fall.
possibility of someone jamming into the
Yeah.
back of your leg.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's it.
still though, a little bit.
But she excelled at the 2-mile run and she helped her high school team qualify for regionals. She also, in addition to all of these honor classes, cross country practice every night, she also had a part-time job. She worked 20 hours a week at Golden Fried Chicken, a local fast food restaurant.
Hey, that's a lot. I
a
mean,
lot.
20 hours a week, that's
A lot.
full part-time. Going to high school, doing after-school activities.
Yep. It's a lot. And her
What was that restaurant called?
Golden Fried Chicken. And the restaurant's manager, Tina Dollar, said, Adrianne's a superstar employee. I made her the cashier at the drive-through window because she knew how to put a smile on everyone's face. She wore a hat with a smiley face on the visor. And after taking an order, she'd say funny things to the customers like, okay, drive forward to the 99th window to get your food.
Huh.
So she was apparently
I like that.
Yeah, just a very outgoing, gregarious sounding person. She had a ton of school spirit. She planned to attend Texas A&M University and become a behavioral analyst.
Wow.
I'm sorry, a behavioral analyst.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Impressive young woman. She also thrived on attention. She was known to be flirty, but I thought this was interesting. A respectable flirt who had clear boundaries. So she like saw that fine line between being overly flirty to the point where people are calling you, unattractive names like slutty or whatever, and just having fun and being flirty. And she somehow, it seems like, managed to stay on that side of just having fun.
Do you think that she was doing that so she wouldn't be called those names? Or do you think she was doing that because of her own personal boundaries?
From what I
values.
I think that,
Yeah.
and from what it sounds like, though, she also did like attention from boys. I mean, at 16, who doesn't, right?
At any age.
At any age, that's
I
true.
think it's true that
That's true.
to some extent, of course, it can tip over the edge of like, maybe that's kind of unhealthy and there's something to look at there.
Sure.
But as human beings, we all like validation, attention, someone saying you look nice or you're this or
Yeah.
you're good or you're whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is Adrianne Jones. And now I'm going to tell you about Diane Zamora. So Diane Zamora was also considered to be quite beautiful. She had this kind of captivating presence. She was a bit shorter, on the shorter side, but she had this dark hair and like really beautiful hazel eyes. She had these eyebrows that she meticulously like manicured to kind of outline her eyes. One of her classmates had said that when you make eye contact with Diane, it's, quote, hard to stop staring back if she makes eye contact with you.
She has deep set eyes, perhaps.
Yep. She went to Crowley High School, which was about 18 miles away from where Adrianne went. Diane's father, Carlos, was described as a soft-spoken man. He was an electrician. Her mother, Gloria, was a registered nurse, and the family was deeply religious and of Hispanic descent.
What religion? Catholicism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Was she 16 as well?
she was 18.
18.
So she was 18. And her dad had a lot of trouble holding a job. I don't know if it was related to substance abuse, if it was just irresponsibility. Like I don't know, but I did read that he had trouble holding a job and it put a lot of financial stress on the family.
Could be ADHD.
Exactly. Yeah. It could have been any number of things, but it made it difficult for them to pay their bills and live. And so Gloria, Diane's mother, every time he lost a job, she'd have to, do back-to-back double shifts as a nurse and pick up extra work. I think she started selling Mary Kay on the side to make extra money. And then Carlos began having affairs. And Diane's mom found out, caused more strife at home. They did not split up at this point, at least, but it was unsettling at home, to say the least, which only makes kind of who Diane was that much more impressive. She was considered to be extremely disciplined. She would wake up early before school at 6:00 every day to study. At one point, when the electricity got cut off in their house for about a week due to not paying the bills, she went out, bought candles, and so that she could do her schoolwork by candlelight.
That is super impressive for an 18-year-old or any age, any human,
sure,
honestly, especially a teenager, a young adult.
Right.
Also, I think my mind goes to, she can't control what's going on with her parents. So she's doing what is within her control.
Yes.
To manage her own space, her own life.
Yes. And she did manage it well and filled it. She was a member of the student council, a member of something called the Key Club, the National Honor Society, the Masters of the Universe, which was a science organization. She played the flute in the marching band, and she also ran on her school's cross-country team.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. When she was 9 years old, she announced to her family that she was going to become an astronaut one day. And at 18 years old, she was sticking to that dream. She was determined to get into one of the U.S. military academies and become an astronaut.
That's amazing.
At school, she was kind of known as someone who kept to herself, not popular, not unpopular. She was just very, very focused. And a lot of that was that she knew her parents could not afford to send her to college, so she needed to do well in school and hopefully get a scholarship. A former neighbor of hers said, Diane is a sweet girl. I always thought she was a little naive and sheltered from the outside world. She was kind of like a virgin in life, She hadn't experienced anything. She didn't know all the things that could happen between people, which is an apt statement because her virginity was very important to her. It was something that she talked about with her family, with her friends. Like, I am not having sex until I'm married. It is very important to me. And she had a boyfriend her sophomore year who cared. I mean, he was a 16-year-old boy. He cared a lot about having sex. And he constantly was trying to have sex with her to the point where she broke up with him because she was like, I'm not doing it.
Well, good for her. Also, that was going to be my next question. Because you said like a virgin in life in some ways, which was kind of a metaphor. And yeah, I was wondering, does that translate to the actual meaning of virgin?
Yes. Yeah. So Diane and Adrianne didn't know each other, but because they went to different high schools.
Right. Oh, okay.
And they were different ages,
a good reminder.
Slightly. Yeah.
Sure. But like, that's a good reminder.
Yeah. They're not friends. They don't know each other at all.
We're separate
individuals, separate schools. They go to school 20 miles apart from each other. They were both on the cross country team. But beyond that, they also shared another common interest, even though they didn't know it because they didn't know each other. So
outer space.
Unbeknownst to them, they shared another common interest. They were both smitten with a high school senior named David Graham.
That name sounds like trouble.
David Graham was an 18-year-old cross-country athlete and battalion commander at Mansfield High School. So he went to the same high school as Adrianne. Diane went to a different high school. David was the youngest among 4 siblings. His parents were divorced and he lived with his father, Jerry Graham, who was a retired elementary school principal. His mom lived in Houston and was a former teacher. And David, his whole life, had wanted to become an Air Force pilot.
That tracks.
He was 7 years old when he witnessed his first air show. And from that moment on, he was so steadfast in that he was going to join the military and become an Air Force pilot. A lot of people describe David kind of as the perfect guy. He was a brilliant student. He was good looking. And one of his classmates said he was kind of the last like real cool guy. Like he was polite and a gentleman, but he was also cool. Like all the bros liked him. He was just a popular, well-liked human.
And this was mid-90s.
95.
Right. And David Graham went to the same school as Adrianne.
Mm-hmm.
Around the same age, 16, 17, something.
He's 18. She's
18,
16.
okay.
Yeah. He made straight A's. He was a national merit student. A congressman in his town agreed to support his application to enroll in the Air Force Academy. Some of the sarcastic kids at his school would address him as Colonel Graham. But he liked it because that's what he wanted to be. And one classmate, I think this is such a telling statement. It says so much without saying so much. A classmate, David Brennan, said he could fall asleep during class and then wake up out of nowhere and still answer the teacher's questions. Annoying quality, but great.
I mean, lovely for him.
Right. Yes. He had impeccable manners. And one woman who knew him said his life was unblemished. He didn't as much throw a spitwad in school. So, Adrianne and Diane don't know each other, but they both obviously have some connection to David because they said they were both interested in him.
Right. And Adrianne went to the same school as him.
She did.
How does Diane know him?
I'll tell you right now. Because even though they were both interested in David, only one of them was dating David, and that was Diane. So David and Diane initially crossed paths about 4 years prior to this. So 91. Their parents, each of their respective parents were taking them to this small airfield located in Fort Worth for gatherings of the Civil Air Patrol. It's an Air Force kind of auxiliary group that teaches military fundamentals, engages in search and rescue missions for crashed airplanes. And it was kind of their first, they were both interested in the military. So this was kind of their first foray into military anything. But there was no romance between them. They're just friends who were, went and had similar interests. But in August 1995, right before Diane's senior year, Diane excitedly told her parents about her feelings for this boy named David Graham that she has now known for several years. She told them, he's so similar for me. We both know exactly what we're going to do in life. He's going to be a fighter pilot. I'm going to be an astronaut. We both love calculus and government. They would stay up on the phone doing their schoolwork together because they were both very studious. And when they were together in person, they were extremely touchy-feely. Diane would always have her hands or arms around him, on him, vice versa. They very, very quickly, after the initial kind of crossing from friends to more than that, which I don't know exactly how it happened, they were kind of obsessed with each other. Like it's all they talked about was each other.
They were also their first kind of infatuations.
Yeah.
Whether it was love, it doesn't matter, right? Like it was their first romantic, intimate relationship. Whether they had sex or not, I don't know. But like that, come on, that's like a big thing. Especially
deal.
when you're 18, 16, 18, 19,
right.
Whatever age. Like that's a huge deal.
Absolutely. Well, and they didn't have sex. They weren't having sex because this was very important to her to not do that. But David became something called a cadet colonel in the youth division of that program, the Civil Air Patrol that they went to together. It's the highest accolade you can get in the Civil Air Patrol. And Diane was something called a wing secretary, so another accolade. And they would often refer to themselves as the Top Gun couple of the 21st century. Yeah. But Diane's family wasn't quite as thrilled about this new relationship as she was, because they had observed some kind of odd behavior from David, and they weren't sure if it was kind of foreshadowing for something bad, or if it was just, he just has kind of an odd, distinct personality. So on one occasion, he brought a collection of his hunting rifles to their house, which they found odd. When he had gone to church with Diane and her family, he wore combat boots, cargo pants, and like a black t-shirt and sweatshirt, and would never remove his hands from around Diane, like very possessive. Another instant, he visited Diane's house and her family was there, and he had a couple of his ROTC friends.
Which stands for?
Reserve Officers Training Corps.
Perfect. I don't know, but that sounds right.
I think so. And so he wanted to entertain Diane's family with these friends that he brought. So he led his ROTC friends into the front yard and instructed them to march back and forth back and forth. And they did. And
they did the formations.
And Diane was laughing, thought it was funny and amusing. But the rest of Diane's family was kind of weirded out by it, because at one point David said to them, I can get these guys to do whatever I want. And something just rubbed them the wrong way about that. But on the other hand, he was incredibly good to Diane. He was incredibly polite to her family. Weeknights, he would drive the 18 miles to go spend time with her at her family's house and do homework.
It's a fair amount of, at least here in Tucson.
That's 18 miles? That's far. That's 30, 40 minutes? 30 minutes.
Oh my gosh. If we're going 18 miles from here,
yeah, it's
we can make it halfway up Mount Lemmon.
Yeah. So it is. It's a ways. And so he would multiple nights a week go, and so that they could do their homework together. Diane's parents were, financially struggling, and she needed combat boots for her program, and they were $100. David bought them for her. Diane was in an accident while driving David's pickup truck, and she had to have pins put into her left hand. And when that happened, David spent nights. He never left the hospital, never left her side.
That's like a big deal.
Yeah. He was very doting on her, very attentive to her, very polite, always referred to her, sir, ma'am, miss, everything.
He was lovely.
He was lovely.
Don't miss what happens next in today's episode. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors.
So, about a month after they started dating, so we're in September 1995, they told Diane's parents that they were engaged. David had sold a couple of his hunting rifles to make a down payment for an engagement ring. And they were planning to get married in the year 2000 because they were going to wait 5 years to get through their military academies.
That's kind of interesting. I'm not saying it sounds smart. I don't know if it is, but that's interesting.
Why do you think that they wanted to get engaged so quickly if they weren't going to get married for 5 years?
Because they loved each other.
Maybe.
Well, I know that's wrong. Benefits or I actually don't know. I mean, I want to say because they loved each other, but I'm guessing it's not that because you asked me, so it's something diff.
No, I think it's absolutely because they loved each other, and also because Diane felt like there was no way they weren't going to get married, so she could give herself to him. She was willing to give up her.
She wanted to bang around.
That's right. She lost her virginity
let's just
to him.
Say it. She wanted to wait. So she was open. Oh my God, I so support it. I'm not talking shit, but
she was open that she was a
once
virgin.
You're no. I'm not saying that. Once you're engaged, she could feel better about having sexual intercourse.
She did. Initially, she didn't think that.
Because I thought if you're waiting for marriage, you're waiting till you're married.
Generally,
again,
yes.
No judgment. I don't care.
No.
Do it, girl.
Of course. I think that she had not planned on that, but that's what...
That helped her feel more...
They got engaged and she felt like it was okay then. Yeah, more power to her.
Totally, but also the way I know these things go, it's not because she had sex with him. I'm just saying, like, oh.
During the first weekend in November, David went to Lubbock, Texas with other members of the Mansfield High cross-country team for the regional meet. And so it was boys and girls who had qualified.
Co-ed.
And the school had a big van that they had rented to transport them. And Adrianne was also on this trip because she was on cross-country. So Adrianne and David didn't really know each other. He was older. They didn't really associate with each other, but they were on this trip together. And there are some accounts that say that people saw them interacting, saw them hanging out. Other people said, no, I never saw them together. I don't think that they know each other at all. Either way, it doesn't really matter because once they got back to Mansfield, this was an overnight trip. So once they got back the next day, for whatever reason, Adrianne asked David for a ride home from school. You know, the van took them all back to school. She needed to get back home.
Adrianne asked David.
Yes.
And they hadn't, from what we know, they hadn't really totally interacted. Maybe been at a few meets together or whatever.
Yeah, they in passing. I mean, I think there was...
I recognize you, but we're not...
in the same
We
grade.
don't know each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he said, sure, yeah, I'll give you a ride. And instead of having him head directly to her house, she started instructing him to kind of like take all these random turns and detours. He knew it wasn't the way to her house, but he was like, okay.
But how did he know that?
Because she said, this is where I live. Can you drive me home?
Oh, and then she said, and he said, yes. They got in the car. They started going.
And
she's
directing him.
Okay.
No, go this way.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of like when you get in an Uber and you're like, I'm going downtown. And they're like, okay, we'll go. Because they take,
a weird way, yes. And it's sometimes frightening.
Well, going home, it's frightening. In the daylight, it's not frightening.
Sure.
Anyways, yes.
Ooh, I'm not going to say it
right
now. So she ended up directing them to a parking lot behind an elementary school. And David parked the car and was like, what are we doing here? And Adrianne allegedly made a move on him, and then they banged in the car behind the elementary school.
Yeah. If that's what she wanted to do, good for her. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I mean, I felt like that's where this was going.
A love triangle.
Well, yeah, but more so once you said she was directing him in odd
places,
back streets.
Right. So that was sometime in October, November 95. And now we're going to flash forward to Christmas.
So after that, let's just assume everything went okay. Like everyone's still alive based on.
Yeah.
So after they had their
banged her
fun.
on. Yep.
They took her home.
He took her home.
He took her home.
And that was it. He was still dating Diane.
I get it.
It was a one-time thing.
I just want to make sure that's where we're at.
Yeah. That's where we're at. Blip on the radar. He kind of, they
so
kind of
maybe
ignored
it's not whatever. It's just what it was.
They kind of ignored each other after that when they'd see each other at school.
Well, because, yeah. Oh, yeah, because they went to school together.
Right.
Diane
David's,
did not.
No. Yeah. So now we're at December. We're at December 3rd, 1995.
Huh.
And Adrianne now has a boyfriend named Tracy Smith.
Cool.
So she's in her bedroom chatting with her boyfriend, Tracy Smith. And at one point on this phone call, she gets call waiting.
Where it's all.
Yeah. And she switches over to the other line. And as she switched over, her mom, Linda, is walking by her bedroom. And she hears Adrianne say to her boyfriend, Tracy, hold on, I got to get the other line. And her mom said, Adrianne's entire demeanor changed when she flipped over to that other line.
Her mom didn't yet know what was said, who it was, what they said.
No idea.
But it was she was right there when she clicked that button where you go, hold on, call waiting.
Yep.
Boop, boop.
Yep.
Okay, sorry for all you guys that are Gen Z. You don't remember where you would just press that hold waiting button.
They weren't even alive.
Well, duh.
Yeah. Yeah. You hear a little beep in your background of your phone call, and then you click the button and you go over to the other line. I mean, because there's call waiting on iPhones. It's essentially the same thing.
It's different,
but you
on
can't
a phone
see who it is.
That's not an iPhone.
Right.
It's different.
With no caller ID at this point, you can't see who it is. So all Adrianne's mom, she's like walking around the house, putting away laundry, doing things. She hears Adrianne say, hold on, Tracy, I have call waiting. And her mom had been back and forth in front of her room. She's not like listening or spying. She's just
Even
aware.
if she is, who cares?
Right.
She's her mother. She's allowed to listen.
So she sees Adrianne's entire demeanor kind of change. She like kind of stiffens. She's not smiling anymore. She just seems awkward. And, but Linda was like, okay, I don't know. It's her friend. She's fine. But later that evening, Linda said to Adrianne, who called when you were on the phone with Tracy? And Adrianne said, oh, that was David from cross country, and he's upset about something. And that was it. Linda didn't really think anything of it. Much, much later that evening of December 3rd, across town, a friend of David's who lived in a nearby town of Burleson heard tapping on his window. He went to his window and looked out, and he saw David and Diane, their clothes covered in blood, and they asked if they could crawl through his window. According to this friend, David said, don't ask me any questions, just please let us come in and clean ourselves up. The friend said that he noticed both David and Diane were upset. They cleaned themselves up, and then they laid down on his bedroom floor and just like spooned each other. Mm. The friend didn't ask questions like David requested, and he didn't mention this to anyone. He was curious, but he was like, I don't know, and I don't want to be involved, so I'm going to say nothing. And
on one hand, I say, good friend, good listening, good listening.
Yeah.
Good friend, good listening. Maybe not the best idea.
Right. So they stayed for, I don't know if it was the whole night or a while, and then they left. And that was that. The next morning, there was a farmer driving along a quiet country road in town. And at first, he thought he saw an animal carcass stuck in a barbed wire fence. It was so disfigured, and he was really unable to tell what it was at first from a distance. But when he got closer, he realized that it was a teenage girl. And he looked. She had suffered severe head trauma and had a gunshot through her cheek and her forehead. She was wearing flannel shorts and a gray T-shirt that had a cross-country event on it. And that was their first clue that this was a Mansfield High student, because she was wearing a Mansfield cross-country shirt.
I wanted to say something super sarcastic, like, oh, that was their first clue, because it said Mansfield. Like, duh.
Yes.
But
yes,
I'm trying to be sensitive. Also, ugh.
An autopsy confirmed that this was Adrianne. And it showed, I saw two completely different things. One said no evidence of sexual assault, which told the police that, like, this is not somebody who's a rapist who's looking to do that. Another one said that it did appear there was sexual assault. So I don't know. The one thing that everyone investigating this case could agree on is that her death was like an execution. She was shot from very close range in her face. And one of the investigators said it takes a cold-blooded person to shoot a young girl in the face from 2 feet away. That girl was mangled. It was absolutely sickening to look at, which is kind of harsh, actually, to say. But
also, don't you think that the perhaps sexually assaulted, perhaps not, was she had maybe recently had sexual intercourse?
Sure. Yeah, she had a boyfriend, and we know that she was at least open to having sex with David, because
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that was semi-recent, whether it was 4 hours, 4 days ago,
Right.
Oof.
So initially, Adrianne's murder didn't get that much attention because the local media was very focused on the kidnapping and murder of a young girl named Amber Hagerman in Arlington, so not far from where they were. And because of that, Adrianne's death kind of was back burner because there was so much coverage on this other murder.
I wonder why
I think it just happened first. But in Mansfield itself, so in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Adrianne's murder, at least initially, got little press. But in Mansfield, 75,000 people living here, it was obviously, the community was deeply affected by this. The high school, of course, took steps to provide spaces for counseling sessions for students. They planted a tree in memory of Adrianne near the soccer field. Many residents wore ribbons as a tribute, and a makeshift cross with 2 branches wrapped in red electrical wire was placed where her body was found.
What do you think about all that? Let me ask you some questions.
I think that that's nice. I also think that sometimes, no, I'm going to leave it at that and say that that's nice. Yeah.
It is nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
I also think, I'll tell you what I think.
Okay.
There's no right answer. Like, no one knows what to do in these situations. So I'm not saying that's wrong. That is nice. Thank goodness they honored and did their best and all the things.
Right.
And also, if that's my person, my sibling, my cousin, my loved one, my friend,
back off. I don't want all
this. It just doesn't do anything.
No, it doesn't
because
make it
you
better.
don't. Again, I want that to happen for someone that I care about. But if I really care about them, in those moments, looking back, it will matter. But in the moment, where's my person?
Exactly.
Tell me what the heck happened.
Yeah, there's nothing that makes that better.
Right.
So they held a private funeral for Adrianne at a Methodist church. Linda, her mom, also allowed the cross country and soccer teams to have a second memorial service at the church that was more open to people. And at
you
that,
mean like more secular?
No, more anyone could come who wanted to.
Like secular, or you're speaking religiously?
No, I'm speaking attendees. Like the private funeral for Adrianne is like family and close friends.
Okay, thank you.
And then the soccer team and the cross country team, opened it up to more people. And at that one on the altar, they had a beautiful color photo of Adrianne that her mom had taken of her several weeks prior, and it was going to be a Christmas gift for Adrianne from her mom, like this beautiful portrait of herself, which is an odd gift to me, but fine. Linda, at that kind of second memorial service, she gave an impromptu eulogy, urging everyone to recall the positive aspects of Adrianne's life. And this is so fucking weird to me.
Tell us your opinion.
She fondly mentioned how Adrianne walked and the distinct way she carried herself,
No.
saying, "Do you remember the way she walked and that bubble butt of hers?"
Yeah, that is so weird.
I find it odd.
It is weird. Okay, also,
It maybe was
that's like
endearing.
someone saying like something about my nose. I know it's not like a family joke, but like
Right, I knew you were going to say that.
it is. Like it could be. This
could
is
be
really
endearing.
taking it out of context.
Agreed.
Also, no one like if you say that, if I die tomorrow and you say that at my funeral,
I would never.
I'll come back. Yeah, you would, and I would haunt
your
any
nose.
I will haunt you all. Also, we're not in that family, so we don't really know.
And you're right, it's completely out of context. But what I do know is that as police began investigating who might be behind this murder, they pretty quickly realized this was going to be a bear of an investigation, because there were no signs of a struggle at Adrianne's house. Remember, she was found out on the road. So, but she was at home earlier that night. So no signs of struggle at her house. There was no evidence of her being restrained. So on her body, like her wrists, her ankles. And there was no indication of a break-in or abduction, nothing. So based on this, detectives thought she must know her killer, because she wasn't restrained. She wasn't pulled out of her window.
She, at some point, went a little bit willingly.
That's it.
Not to crap on her. Duh.
Sure.
If I know someone, I care about them, I want to hang out with them, I'm going willingly. And then something turned.
So very few kind of physical clues. And so beyond that, the suspect pool was another daunting aspect, because, and this is a really interesting thing that I came across, when adults are murdered, they usually have a handful of close connections. Sure, they may be, and this is a generalization. Of course, there are people who have hundreds of friends. I'm just generalizing. And this is true of me.
Do you
for
know
sure.
anyone who has hundreds of friends?
No, and so that's why I think this is pretty accurate. Adults, when they're murdered, they have, a handful of friends. They have colleagues at work. They have family members.
If it's someone that you know, there's about 10, 12, 20 people that you could look to.
Right. But a high school student, especially a very popular high school student like Adrianne was,
hundreds,
interacts with countless people and peers on a daily basis. And again, a regular high school student interacts with a ton of people, passes people in the hallway, teachers, classes, everything. And Adrianne was very popular. She had a job. She played sports. She was out and about in the world. So this pool of suspects was now very large. Because her body was found in Grand Prairie, which was neighboring, it's close to Mansfield, but it was just outside of Mansfield. The Grand Prairie detectives, Dennis Clay and Dennis Meyer, started interviewing students from Adrianne's school. Their goal was to kind of identify anyone who may have had some type of resentment towards her, jealousy towards her, a problem with her, anything like that. They're looking for somebody who maybe has an adverse relationship with Adrianne. And I
bet there were people that had adverse, relations with her that she didn't even know about. Like,
of course.
Because she didn't do anything wrong to them. I'm sure she has done, or at the time, done something wrong to someone, but
they didn't know.
Also feel envious of people that are popular or pretty in high school. Come on.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So detectives spoke with a handful of students and they found themselves no closer. Like, nobody really knew of any issues she had with anybody or people who had issues with her. Known issues. So that just meant that they needed to speak to everyone. And while the police were at the forefront of their investigation, Adrianne's mother, Linda, was also trying to do her own investigatory work. She went to psychics and mediums looking to uncover some type of answers about Adrianne's murder. Every day she made a point of wearing something that belonged to her daughter, an article of clothing, shoes, makeup, jewelry. And every night, Linda and Bill, Adrianne's parents, left a light on in Adrianne's bedroom, almost as if they were kind of like hoping she would show up. Her body's been found. She's not alive. But they left her room exactly as it was and left a light on for her every night, which is just so sad.
Maybe for them, it was like her spirit, her soul, her being, something will see it and know we're thinking about her. Yeah. I have no idea.
No, I think that's fair. Authorities were looking at everyone and anyone who came into contact with Adrianne in recent weeks and months. Her inner circle, acquaintances, people she only passed by in the hallways, everyone. Because the murder of a high school student in a small town, rumors are going to fly. And they anticipated that. And they wanted to really try to make sure that they could keep those rumors at bay as long as possible.
What kind of rumors?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you because they didn't keep those rumors at bay. April Grossman was a friend of Adrianne's on cross country, and she said, many of us had this eerie feeling that the person responsible for Adrianne's death is one of us, walking the same hallways as us at school. Those like April who were really close to Adrianne, they were scared. They thought maybe she was killed because she knew something. And so this was the first rumor. She knew something dangerous, and that's why she was killed. And maybe this killer will target us as well, her friends, because they think that she told us, even though we literally don't have anything.
Right, we're making this totally up. Not out of nothingness, out of fear and like wandering mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first rumors. Certain students claimed that they heard rumors that Adrianne would sneak out of her house at night and attend all-night rave parties located an hour away. So speculation was that she met somebody at one of these raves and was murdered by them. Some people, there were murmurs and rumors about her having connections with drug dealers. There was also gossip about the fact that Adrianne was promiscuous. Her mom heard these rumors and got involved, saying that my daughter is not promiscuous. And she is not sexually active with multiple partners.
Also promiscuous, I will say this. That doesn't mean, hey, kill me.
Of course not. There's nothing there. You can be
Like,
as
I don't like
promiscuous as you want.
Also promiscuous. What? Sleep around?
Yeah, but that doesn't justify being killed. Of course not.
No, it doesn't. Nothing about being killed. It
Of
means you
course.
sleep with people.
These are just rumors, though, that were going around.
I know. I'm sorry. I get fired up. You know I do about this stuff.
I know.
I can't help it.
It's okay. And there were these were all pretty absurd, but there was even more absurd stories. One of them being that a close friend of Adrianne's had harbored intentions to harm her because Adrianne revealed that the friend got drunk, and she told her friend's mom that.
I like that.
There was also a tall tale involving that Adrianne was abducted by aliens going around.
I was just going to say that. What about the AIs or the ETs? I was literally just going to say, like, come on.
So there was a lot of rumors. Police
That's not great. I'm sorry.
Couldn't keep the rumors at bay, and so be it. But they were determined to kind of get to the truth. Obviously, they were not following any of these rumors because they were just that, rumors. So their first step was to kind of retrace Adrianne's last night. So they went to her parents, and Bill and Linda told the police what occurred the night before. You don't want to miss what happens next in today's murder story, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors. They said on the evening that Adrianne was murdered, they allowed her to continue a phone conversation past her usual phone curfew of 10 o'clock. Her boyfriend, Tracy, new boyfriend, had been away for the weekend with his parents, and he called around 10:30. Bill and Linda didn't really know Tracy. They knew that he was physically kind of daunting. He was huge. He looked like they described him as a college football lineman. He went to a different high school than Adrianne. They had met. They knew that Adrianne had met him at Golden Fried Chicken at her job. That's where they met. And as I said earlier, Linda overheard Adrianne saying, "Hold on, there's someone on the other line." Linda found out that it was David calling. Linda had never heard of a David. She didn't know. And after Adrianne finished that phone call with Tracy, she was in her room. Around 10:45, Linda walked by and noticed Adrianne was still awake. She was ironing her pants for school the next day. And Linda said, turn off your lights. It's time to go to bed. Sometime past midnight, one of Adrianne's younger brothers apparently heard an engine moving slowly outside the house. And he got up and looked out the window. And he saw what he thought was a pickup truck driving away from the house. He never saw it in the driveway. He never saw it stop in front of the house. He just saw it driving down the road. He kind of assumed that maybe it had been at the house. And then the next morning when Adrianne's parents went to go wake her up for school, she wasn't in her bedroom. And they thought, oh, she probably went for a run. But then they saw her running shoes in the house and they got worried. And so Linda's first contact, which is interesting to me, she first called the cross-country coach, Leanne Burke. And she said, do you know anyone named David from the cross-country team? And Leanne said, well, yeah, there's David Graham. And Linda said, well, Adrianne's not here. I think she's missing. And David Graham called her last night, I'm pretty sure. And the cross-country coach was confused because David and Adrianne really never interacted in front of anyone else. So she was like, I don't even think they're friends, but, yes, he is on the cross-country team. So the cross-country coach asked April, one of Adrianne's friends. She said, go to David's math class right now in second period and ask him about calling Adrianne because this is confusing to me, which seems maybe like overstepping.
Let's take it back a few decades.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
Okay.
Yeah. So
was he there at
he
math
was
class?
He was in math class, and April
Okay.
went and asked him, and David appeared genuinely puzzled and looked at her like she was making no sense and said, did I talk to Adrianne? No, why would I? And April was like, yeah, he had no idea what he was talking about. Like, he's not involved in this. But because of that, police decided to speak to David pretty early on in this investigation because they had, got wind that he was talking to her that night. But they were pretty certain right off the bat that he wasn't involved. So they didn't even give him a polygraph test. And one reason was that David's name was not in Adrianne's phone. So they were like, they're not even friends. Maybe he didn't call them.
Call her phone in 95?
Well, in her address book. I'm sorry. Her phone address book. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yes, her personal phone book.
Also, I was going to say, let's take it forward 20 years. In her phone doesn't mean anything.
Do you know how many people I have in my phone and how many people I don't have in my phone that I know?
Okay. Also, that's the point. It's not how many people you have in your phone
that
under a different name. That doesn't matter.
No,
it's what you don't have in your phone.
Yes. I'm not saying under a different name. I'm saying I have so many people in my phone that like, I sometimes like, because you know, the cloud, I don't know who they are.
Right. But in her phone book, she didn't have him. So it'd be the same as if you knew someone, but you didn't store their number.
Right.
Because you didn't want anyone to know.
Right. And so he was not in her handwritten phone book. And when police talked to all of Adrianne's closest friends, his name never came up. And even when they asked about him, one of Adrianne's best friends, Tracy said, Adrianne tells me her deepest, darkest secrets. I've never heard the name David, ever. But David did seem visibly distressed and sad and was crying at Adrianne's memorial, which to me is like nothing. You're at a memorial for a fellow student. Okay, if you're crying, like big deal. Like that doesn't tell me that you're a murderer, right?
It doesn't tell me you're not a murderer.
It doesn't tell me anything, to be honest. Police spoke to a few other students asking like more about David. And Kenny, whose locker was next to David's throughout all 4 years of high school, said, we all knew him, but we also didn't really know him, you know? Which is a pretty innocuous statement. After David was cleared in the police's mind, they had another suspect. David was never a suspect, so let me clarify that. The first ever suspect that they really had was a teenage girl named Tara. That's actually not her name. I was not able to find her real name. That's what she was called in every article. And she lived in a trailer park in Mansfield. This shocked the shit out of me.
You?
Mm-hmm.
You.
Me. Yeah. So Tara had gained notoriety in Mansfield due to an incident a year prior to this, when she believed her boyfriend had been involved with one of Adrianne's closest friends. This led Tara to attack this girl, Adrianne's friend, with a baseball bat, causing severe injuries, including a broken cheekbone and a concussion. Then Tara took a gun and tried to shoot her boyfriend, only injured him, and as a result, there was a restraining order against Tara to prevent her from going to school and contacting the girl she had assaulted. During the legal proceedings, Adrianne spoke on behalf of her injured friend. She testified for her, saying that Tara had threatened her and, supporting the fact that Tara had attacked her friend. Afterwards, Tara apparently said to Adrianne, "I'll get you for this." And so a lot of people believe that Tara might be responsible for Adrianne's murder. Adrianne, after all, had severe head trauma and was shot with a gun. Those were both things that Tara did to this girl. This seemed like a very viable suspect. However, police found evidence that supported Tara's claim of innocence. She passed a lie detector test. She had an alibi. After Tara, they also looked at Tracy, Adrianne's boyfriend, but he immediately offered to take a polygraph, passed, and also had an alibi. But Tracy did say something to the police. He said, "There's someone named Brian that I think Adrianne clicked over on call waiting that night." He didn't say, and the police said, "Well, I thought it was David that she talked to." He said, "No, she said Brian."
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And Adrianne had said to her boyfriend, "Brian is feeling down and wants to meet me for a conversation tonight." So police found Brian McMillan, a local teenager that was struggling with severe depression. There was also multiple different accounts from people who knew Adrianne that Brian had developed an unhealthy obsession with Adrianne. They had worked together earlier at a Subway. And he would, when he wasn't on shift with her, he would come, and she called it harassment. He thought he was just like coming to see her,
visiting,
hang out with her. She would see him coming out of the parking lot, and she would duck down and hide behind the counter and try to crawl into the back.
Okay, well, that says something. Mm-hmm. That says something, period.
Yes. But that's very circumstantial.
Sure, still odd. I'm not saying that makes a murderer.
Of course not. So detectives had minimal evidence against Brian. But when they found out that he was taking 4 different medications that could have like dangerous interactions, they questioned maybe he did something that he couldn't remember, that he was kind of out of his mind.
Can I make a pause?
Yeah.
When you say it like that, and I have no idea, and it may be exactly how you said it, but you said he's taking 4 different medications. Perhaps he was prescribed 4 different medications.
Wow, that's a good,
like
really important
not you,
distinction.
But the statement makes it seem like he's just fucking around with meds.
You're totally right. Prior to all of this, multiple people said that Brian had developed an unhealthy obsession with Adrianne.
Sure.
Just from that alone, he's questionable. We want to question him. And then they found out he's taking all these medications that could have dangerous interactions and cause him to act in ways that he wouldn't usually. That was it for them. When Brian came down for questioning, his initial sworn statement, he said, "I don't even know Adrianne." A little bit more questioning, he admitted he did know her. And when a detective questioned him if he had spoken to Adrianne the night of her murder, Brian mentioned, he said, "Maybe, but I don't really remember. I was drinking that night for the first time in 6 months, and I was on a lot of medication, so I was very drunk. I felt upset because all of my friends had girlfriends and I was single, so I felt excluded from the group and I got drunk." So to police, in their head, they're like, okay, a lonely, isolated boy can't capture the attention of this popular girl that he's infatuated with. He wants to go meet her late at night. Maybe things got out of control. And so they probed further. They asked Brian, "Did you go to Adrianne's house that night?" Brian said, "Maybe, but I was so drunk I don't remember." They said, "Did you pick her up and take her somewhere?" And he said, "Maybe, but I don't remember."
Do you think he actually didn't remember? I really obviously have no idea.
I think he didn't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So,
what a nightmare for him if he, I mean, either which way, if he remembered, nightmare. If he didn't, gosh.
But they didn't have anything they could hold him on. This was all questionable. They let him go. But a week later, early morning, December 15th, police officers with a search warrant arrived at his house. Okay, guys, I hate to do it, but that is the end of part 1 of this episode. We will be back next week with part 2. And we just want to wish everyone a very happy, safe, and healthy holiday if you celebrate. Thank you for listening. Go check out our Patreon. Follow us on all socials. And it really helps the show so much if you could rate and review it on Apple Podcasts. Okay, thanks, guys. Bye.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, "Good night and good luck."